Welcome, reading the New Testament in original Greek with syntax analysis. We're reading in this session Matthew chapter 2, verse 2. Λέγοντες, πού εστιν ο τεχθής βασιλεύς των Ιουδαίων. Είδομεν γαρ αυτού τον αστέρα εν τη Ανατολή, και ήλθομεν προσκυνήσε αυτού. NRSV, asking, where is the child who has been born king of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage. A couple of interesting points that we can compare with the Greek text and the English versions, is that in English translations, the present perfect form is used, who has been born. We have only othekthis. And also next one is his star at its rising. We have don astera aftu and the Anatoli. The meaning is combined there together. In the previous verses, NRSV doesn't talk about at its rising. Now we have the meaning together there. And let's take a look at the syntax. Legontes. It's a participle that derives from lego, to say, to speak. Well, in this case, the question follows. At the end, you say the semicolon. It's the mark, and a Greek way of saying it is this sentence is a question sentence. So legontes, it's the nominative in a plural, making it a subject as the previous verse from the previous verse as the wise men, magus, in a plural, magoi or magi, right? So saying, where is pu? Where, estin is from the imi verb. Where is, we have now with a definite article o, techthis. Techthis, we talked about it before in the previous sessions a few times. Tech, we have the key syllable. Well, we have although with a he, tech. We talked about the syllables that you can recognize it from. Tek, tok, tk. It's from the verb tikto, to give birth to bring forth. Now, the kappa is a guttural. The kappa, when it comes with a theta, and it becomes a weaker sounds, because the theta, kappa, and it conflicts in the pronunciations. So it becomes he, it's weak. And aspirata is called. So tech with these, theta, of course, then indicates, and this is a passive, and is, these together. So makes it an aorist of passive in a masculine form. So the one with a definite article, the one who was born, right? The one who was brought forth. Now we have a double nominative. We talked about it in a double accusative in A as B that you translated, or A, B as an apposition, additional information. The same applies in a double nominative case too. So the one who was brought forth as king, as a king without definite article, we have don Iudeon. But since this is an additional information of the person who was born, so you could insert the king of Jews. Idomen. This is an aorist form with a first person plural. We. It's from the verb orao, to see. It's a very common aorist form of verbs that we're going to see. Well, we already have seen idu. It's in a different form, but it's very common throughout the Gospel of Matthew. So it's better to memorize it. In the New Testament time, technically, New Testament Greek, the idioms will become so very common that it becomes almost its own verb. Let's say, I saw, we saw. So you can actually, in some Greek dictionary, you can search an idon itself, and then you will find the category there. So idomen is from the oral, and And we have the inflections from the future aorist and the perfect medium passive, and aorist passive. You have to memorize it separately because this doesn't normally follow the contraction, right? The rules we talked about it. Well, technically, um, to follow the rules that we talked about it. Omicron with the epsilon's supposed to be U, Omicron epsilon, but it's not. We have epsilon iota E. So that's why you have to memorize it separately. So in an aorist forms the edon, right? And then it makes it to omen with the first person plural. We saw, God is opposed to a positive word, and after we have the genitive. And where does it belong to? Well, edomen is a verb, but it doesn't require the genitive. So don astera, what follows? The star. So the star of him. So his star. Anti Anatoli. Anatoli, this we talked about and also in a previous. The horizon, the where the sun rises. That's what it means. Not exactly the east. The direct meaning is the horizon where the sun rises. In the horizons where the sun rises, we saw his star. So that's why in an NRSV translates this, we have seen the rising star. Okay, ilthomen. Ilthomen is from the verb erchome. It's a definite passive. The verb itself, it's a definite passive forms, which means the form itself is in passive forms, but it actually has an active meaning. I come. Right? Then ilthomen with the vocal stretch in the front, and epsilon becomes epsilon, and with the theta, of course, then there's a passive indications, and an omen again, the first person plural. We came. Because it's a definite passive, and you translate it an active meaning. The erocomes, the signal roots and syllables we talked about in eleth, elith, and elth, right? Then we have from the elth, we have vocal stretch and an aorist. So ilthomen, we came. Proskinise afto, proskineo, to worship, to give respect. The worship, someone, right? You give respect to someone. And then, of course, naturally follows a dative, to someone. So to whom? Afto, the one who was born as the king of the Jews. Safto. We're here to worship him. In English translation, we had to give homage, right? The sigma, alpha, iota, the se at the ending with eta together, actually, ise. It's a typical forms of the aorist infinitive. We have the vocal stretch in the middle. In the case of ilthomen, we have the vocal stretch in the front. So not only in the front, but also in the middle of the syllables, the vocal stretch occurs. We have seen it many times in an aorist, of course, most often. So for example, poieo, because epsilon becomes a little longer, the vocal stretch, of course, in the shorter vocal becomes a longer vocal. So poieo, sorry, I just read it in an aorist. Pieo to piiso. Timao, a becomes also e. Timao, timiso. The loso. So proskinise afto, to worship them. Okay, this is today's session. I hope you have enjoyed it. Our text is from the Nestle and Allen Novum Testamentum Graece 28th editions with the permission from the Nestle and Allen. I'm using the text. Thanks for listening. We'll look forward to the next session.